What's up, you guys? Welcome back. In today's video we're going to be talking about putting fenders on your motorized bicycle and how it could be a safety hazard, but also how to reinforce your stock fenders so that you can run them. But without further ado, let's dive right in. So some of you noticed that this bike looks a lot different than you guys have last seen it. If you don't know already, the video where we did the HP carburetor, that bike was red and black, and now I went ahead and painted it blue and black, so it looks a lot cleaner now. I just couldn't stand that rustic look. I know a lot of you guys enjoyed it, but personally I just love having a nice looking bike and a daily rider, so we went ahead and changed that out. But you can notice that I went ahead and installed plastic fenders, and basically I actually bought these on clearance. They were missing the hardware, which was okay for me because I went ahead and made my own bracket, and I also made one for the back. What I basically did was take some 1/8 inch aluminum and went ahead and bend a 90-degree angle and use some M6 hardware to hold it on. Now for bracing the fender, most of you guys know if you go ahead and install a plastic fender onto one of these motorized bicycles, what will happen is this thing will start to vibrate a lot, and it won't necessarily jam up or anything, but in the back of your mind you could be worried about it. And what I did to solve this is I used that same 1/8 inch aluminum and went ahead and cut out these little fender braces and used some really tiny screws on there just to hold it against the plastic. I drilled a tiny hole there and on the other side also. This allows the fender to be super rigid. It still flexes with the plastic, but not enough to cause any problems. And also your forks are designed to have this, so there's also another hole up there. Same goes for the rear fender. These are really known to move around a lot. Like when I first put it on the bike without these straps, I went for a ride and I looked behind me and I just saw the fender moving all over the place. So same principle here, just cut out a little fender strap. And you know, the way I made this is I had a big sheet of aluminum and I basically took a straight edge, and this is 3/4 inch wide by 13 inches long. So there's some measurements for you guys on this specific frame, mountain bike frame. So yeah, so I went ahead and cut those slits down, rounded the corners so they look nice, and then like I said, finished it off with some bolts. Now if you have a rear rack already installed, you're probably saying, oh well, how did you mount that? Well, I just went ahead and replaced the hardware with longer bolts, and that helped out a lot. So there's basically a little 101 on, you know, getting your fenders to stay properly. Like I said, I know I didn't go into detail. I was going to film a video, but at the time I couldn't, just because honestly guys, I forgot. But I'll let you know right now, a safety warning about these. You're probably noticing this motor right here, and most guys are going to say, oh, it's okay to run the fenders, you know, if you cruise around and you don't go full throttle. But guys, this motor is built to go fast, so I'm going full throttle. And I'm starting to kind of, you know, concern my safety a little bit, just because I've seen the Huffy Cranbrook's lockup. I've seen the Kent Bayside lockup. I've never seen one of these do it, and I think that's because this has a fender strap here, it's connected here, and it's also connected down there. So I'm not saying this is a bulletproof setup, but in my experience, guys, you know, I've had this bike for over a year. It's got the same amount of flex as this one does, and this is the safe option. So in my experience, I've never had issues with fenders. If you're going off-road, you know, you could probably shear off one of these bolts, but it's very unlikely. So just keep that in mind when you're riding these motorized bicycles. Know their limitations, know what you can do and what you can't do. For example, this bike was built to be on the street. It was not built to go off-road. It doesn't have suspension, but it does have a little Springer seat for those smaller bumps. So like I said, guys, you know your limitations. Oh yeah, one more thing I wanted to mention is this front brake caliper actually broke off on me yesterday. Not due to the fender, but it was definitely part of it. So basically what I had to do to get this caliper to fit, I don't know if you can see right in there, I had to slot it out. And when you do that, you're basically weakening the aluminum that it's built out of and causing it to, you know, have a vibration point. So it did go ahead and break off. So I am going to replace this eventually, but I do have the rear coasters in the back, so I'm good for now. But if you went ahead and took the coaster brake off and you're relying on front and rear calipers, definitely keep that in mind. So if you're still not convinced that these stock fenders are safe, what you can go ahead and do is, you know, modify your stock fenders so that they still match the bike, right? Because these black fenders match the black paint, and this bike looks awesome with fenders. So you don't want to take it off, right? One of the solutions to your problem is you could go ahead and get some of these like larger washers, and I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see, but this, when under here, you know, with the bolt and everything, is really going to spread out the load onto the fender and not cause a weak point on it. And it's really gonna, even up the load when you tighten the bolt down. Also, you could go ahead and use some blue Loctite. That will help a lot. In combination with these washers and making your own fender straps like I did on the other bike, this thing's going to be really solid. And if you're probably asking why didn't I do this yet? Well, I recently just got that metal, so I'm going to go ahead and convert this fender, to the aluminum, so it's a lot stiffer than this cheap, steel. But yeah. So for your front fender, the same principles apply. You can use lock washers, flat washers, and Loctite. But if you're still kind of, concerned about the safety on your bike, what a lot of guys do, right, is to reinforce their rear fender and completely remove the front one. Because in my experience, I've seen a lot of, unfortunate crashes with the front fender folding up, but with the rear one, yes, it may destroy a wheel and bend up your spokes, but you can somewhat save that a lot better than if your front wheel locks up. Because if your front wheel locks up, you're going to go over the bars. If your rear wheel locks up, you could skid and go off the road. But if you know how to really ride your bike and maneuver it properly, you can save that crash a lot better. So I would just recommend taking this one off. That's what I may do in the future. I just really like how it looks, guys, so that's why I haven't taken it off yet. But now that I'm starting to think about it, I'm going to go ahead and reinforce these fenders as soon as possible. So guys, that wraps it up for this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to comment, like, subscribe, and stay tuned because we're going to go ahead and start modifying this engine here. Now you can see it looks fairly stock, and the speed carb is off. Or sorry, the HP carburetor's off, and I used the filter from it. And you're probably saying, well, why is that? Well, basically, I had a starting issue the other day where my CDI wires, the little Chinese plugs that they use, to connect the two, well, those went ahead and ripped off when I took them out to paint the bike, so I had to kind of not jerry-rig necessarily, but I had to go ahead and make my own connectors, and those don't really work very long. And it was shorting out and it wasn't starting. It kept hitting metal and things like that. So what I did was I went ahead and just made my whole new wiring harness for it. Like I cut the wires here and I cut them at the magneto, and I built my own wiring harness from the ground up. All new wires, all new connectors, soldered, everything like that. So it's a really solid thing. So I might show you guys how to make one of these because, your motorized bicycle not starting, 99, I shouldn't say 99, about 80% of your cases could be the fact that your wires just aren't touching properly and making good contact for good spark. And when I was trying to diagnose it, I just replaced the carburetor because I thought that was the problem. So that's why that's like that, right now. I will switch it. But, yeah, and then another thing is you got to color code these wires, guys, because I made the mistake of not color coding it correctly, and I hooked them up the way I thought it was supposed to, but then when I started it, I had good spark, but it wouldn't start, so I flipped the two wires, and ever since then, this motor's been running great. Alright guys, see you in the next one.